Good morning. I'm Ken Shocknick, and Space Shuttle Challenger is just a few seconds away from blasting off from the Kennedy Space Center near Cape Canaveral, Florida.
9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Control program. Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range. Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles, downrange distance 3 nautical miles. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up. 1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles. Controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
On a cold morning in Cape Canaveral, Florida, 7 astronauts prepared to take flight on the Challenger shuttle, otherwise known as OV-099.
After being delayed multiple times before due to machinery malfunctions and freezing temperatures, the Challenger was finally ready to take off on January 28, 1986.
The astronauts boarding were Krista McAuliffe, Gregory Jarvis, Judith Resnick, Francis Scooby, Ronald McNair, Michael Smith, and Ellison Onizuka. They said goodbye to their family and friends as they boarded the spacecraft.
Although there was a small risk of something going wrong, made bigger by the icicles forming on the launch pad, everyone was eager to watch the shuttle lift off.
The day was clear. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, an observer said. You could cut that sky with a knife. It almost looked like the sky was frozen. Millions of Americans gathered at the Kennedy Space Center and around their TVs to watch the launch take place. Everyone was extremely relieved and lighthearted when the spacecraft took off safely. However, a little more than a minute later, everyone's heart sank when the Challenger space shuttle burst into flames and broke apart, falling into the ocean below. The tragedy took all 7 astronauts' lives and brought the space exploration program to a halt.
This mission was more important than it would have been normally because it included a normal civilian, not just trained astronauts.
Krista McAuliffe, a social studies teacher from Concord, New Hampshire, had been selected out of more than 11,000 applicants for the Teacher in Space project because NASA officials said she had an infectious enthusiasm.
NASA hoped launching the shuttle with an ordinary person would draw attention to the space program and also show the dependability of the rockets despite financial struggles they were having at the time.
If the launch had been a success, it would have been a huge step forward in terms of space exploration. However, because of the explosion, NASA discontinued the space program for 2 years and took many precautions in the next launches. What would have happened if the shuttle hadn't exploded? Most people say it would have made it into space, and the astronauts might even be alive today. Space Shuttle Endeavour was built as a replacement for the Challenger, so it wouldn't have been built if the launch had orbited successfully. The Challenger explosion of 1986 affected space exploration in many ways, such as how NASA interacted with their engineers and how they launched other shuttles in the future. Since then, NASA has become more vigilant about sending rockets into space, and the disaster brought more attention to the engineers and the launch decision team. The officials at NASA, who had the power to stop the launch, simply dismissed arguments brought up about how the launch could turn catastrophic if temperatures dropped low enough.
The Challenger disaster relates to exploration, encounter, and exchange because of the interaction NASA had with America after the disaster, and how NASA continued the space program despite this setback.
A few of the workers at NASA, Alan McDonald, Bob Ebling, Roger Boisjoli, and a few of their other colleagues fought to stop the launch but were overruled. NASA wanted to prove that they could accomplish this launch even with some doubt.
30 years after the disaster, Bob Ebling spoke with NPR about how hard he tried to stop the shuttle from taking off.
Listen to me and wait for the weather to change. It might have been a completely different outcome. There was more than enough people there to say, let's give it another day or two, but no one did.
The explosion relates to exploration because the shuttle was set to orbit around Earth while Krista McAuliffe would teach lessons from outer space. Ronald Reagan, the president at the time of the explosion, postponed his State of the Union address that was scheduled for that night to speak about the disaster.
I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons.
Launching the shuttle, which was supposed to orbit the Earth, would be the perfect example of exploration. Not only that, the encounter also relates to the Challenger disaster. Encounters are often unexpected and unpredictable journeys. Most people had never imagined such a horrible disaster.
Overall, the Challenger explosion was one of the biggest tragedies in American history and shaped the way NASA launched rockets from then on out.
A memorial flame was lit in the Los Angeles Olympic Stadium. Our national space effort lost innocence. The Challengers learned of death. We will travel in space, but now none of us will take it for granted.